So, welcome everyone. And today we are at another online talk for Middle East Insights platform. And we are really very empowered and privileged to have the presence of Joseph Daher with us, who is going to talk about the role of Hezbollah in the current geopolitical context of Middle East. So, with this, sir, thank you so much. Shukran for Mercy, and thank you for being here today. And my first question to you is that we'll come to the recent developments right now, but the first thing that I want to focus on is your book. What prompted you, apart from this lineage, to write about Hezbollah, and what were the personal challenges that you faced while writing about Hezbollah? Because you were there during the time when the Arab uprising was at its full peak, specifically from August 2011 to September 2012. So, what were the challenges that, as an author, did you face while writing this book?
First of all, thank you very much for your invitation, for your very nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you, and hopefully we can have a fruitful discussion. Again, thank you for this opportunity. The idea to write this book basically, obviously, is connected to my link to the region, originally from Syria, even though I was brought up mainly in Switzerland, but spent extensive times, in Syria, Lebanon, occupied Palestine, and throughout the region through various, work, mission, and other more, I would say, politically oriented travels, etc. But moreover, it was connected to a period after the Israeli war in Lebanon in 2006, where Hezbollah was very much acclaimed as a resistant actor, as an actor that could possibly provide an alternative for the popular classes of the region, not only Lebanon. And for me, this had limits, while, always being a supporter of the right of resistance against any kind of aggression. And today as well, regarding the, continual genocide war against the Palestinian and Gaza war, the right or the principle of defending the right of resistance should not be colluded into supporting the political perspectives of the political parties leading this kind of resistance. And this was my perspective regarding Hezbollah, and acting very much not only academically but also on a more politically oriented scene among the left, or leftist academics, leftist political parties. There was an important debate regarding the nature of Hezbollah. How should we position ourselves, how to analyze it academically, while the literature was dominated, I would say, by two main perspectives. One seeing it as, and mostly dominated by Western academics, seeing Hezbollah only as a terrorist actor, very essentialist perspective in the clashes of civilization. And another one that was shared both by European, Western, and local academics in the Middle East, that Hezbollah was representing a form of left Islamic ideology and resistance. And this was problematic for me. For both, obviously, one was more problematic for me, is the first one, but the second one as well did not answer what was truly the nature of Hezbollah, how to analyze it, what was Hezbollah's perspective on the political economy of Lebanon, neoliberalism, imperialism as a system, women's issues, how does it position itself regarding the Lebanese sectarian neoliberal political system, and everything. And this where came the idea of Hezbollah, trying to answer a question that would be useful not only for the academic scene, but more widely, if you want, in understanding this political party in Lebanon and the region.
So, during your time there in Lebanon specifically, was there any moment where you felt scared, or in doing your ethnographic field work, or you felt as if, because there's always a difference between participant observation. So did you feel as an outsider, or was it easier for you, maybe because of language and the cultural knowledge and the nostalgia of the past, to embed yourself better in the culture?
Well, embedding in the country was not necessarily difficult, but I never felt directly threatened, but I also was very careful in the ways I asked my question, the way I presented myself. But more importantly, what was a bit more threatening, it was the particular context. When I was doing my PhD work, as you mentioned, in between 2011 and 2012, it was the beginning of the Syrian revolutionary process,
Yeah.
in which Hezbollah assisted the Syrian regime in repressing the protesters and participating militarily on the side of the Syrian regime. So I was particularly careful not to show in my interviews or with Hezbollah militants or pro-Hezbollah personalities, not to talk directly about Syria or in a way that could show a particular participation rather than an opinion regarding the Syrian uprising, but participation in a meaning that's supporting particular trends of the Syrian uprising, progressive actors, circles, networks from Lebanon and outside of Lebanon. So this was maybe the most challenging. Otherwise, as you said, I think knowing the country, knowing the culture helped very much, and knowing to understand the particular social, economic, and sometimes sectarian dynamics within Lebanon helped me definitely in my field of research.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now, my next question is that in your book, you have mentioned that sectarianism is a modern contemporary phenomenon. Um, what the Western media has tried to create this narrative that be it Bahrain, be it Lebanon, specifically Lebanon, because it's about Maronite Christians and Sunnis and Shias. And your book has mentioned how Maronite Christians held most of the bourgeoisie power than compared to Shias. Um, so when you think about this imposition of sectarianism in Lebanon right now, what changes after writing this book in the past couple of years, or specifically after the starting of the genocide on 7th of October? Have you perceived any kind of further fragmentation or further uh, division or widening of this Western imposed language of sectarianism, which is also a product of neoliberalism and economic policies?
Well, I think there's different dynamics of what you said. What was important for me was to challenge, Orientalist and essentialist perspective regarding Lebanon or the Middle East more generally. Basically, to say, if you're born Muslim or Christian, you will necessarily fight each other in the Middle East, or that, for example, essentialist analysis or perspective, seeing the Middle East as unable to progress towards democracy, socio-economic justice, etc., because of a particular religion or ethnicity. All these kinds of perspective analysis should be challenged because it's basically rooted into racism. And Orientalism obviously has roots within, the development of Western imperialism. I mean, as a modern phenomenon as we know it, because prior to the development of Western imperialism, there was a study, or at least a domain called Orientalism, but that was much more interested into teaching and learning about languages, Oriental languages, etc. But with the development of Western imperialism, this took directly another form. So this was my first objective into this. And for me, what has always been important is that while definitely acknowledging that Middle East, just as other, geographical areas in the world, we have to take into consideration different cultural dynamics. We should study, analyze this region with the social, basically social science tools that we use for any kind of region in the world. For example, looking at, the colonization of Ireland, we usually speak about historically the colonization of Ireland. We don't speak about a historical conflict between Catholics and Protestants. And you were mentioning, the genocidal war that started this October against the Palestinians. Once again, we have a framing by, I would say, the dominant Western discourse seeking the roots of this conflict, as they presented, between a conflict of civilization, religions, etc., that is also supported, by the Prime Minister Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and different Western, ruling classes in Europe or the US, seeing, this conflict as or portraying Israel as the first, kind of basis of the Judeo-Christian civilization against the barbaric Islamic civilization, Oriental civilization. And this kind of roots goes back to the end of the 19th century, if you look at the Zionist movement. So definitely we do have this. But what is important to understand, this kind of rhetoric, claimed by Israel or Western ruling classes, is a way to justify deeper political and economic interests. This is just a rhetoric, obviously rooted into racism, imperialism, that we should challenge. So I would say there's a form of continuation, again, trying to link more, providing an academic perspective that is rooted into materialism, historical materialism, seeking to explain dynamics in our region or the Middle East and North Africa or wherever in the world through the various political, economic, social dynamics rather than essentialist perspective seeking the roots of explanation into a so-called race, ethnic, religion, etc.
Yeah, that's true. And turning to Netanyahu, who has done something very controversial yesterday. He he unveiled a map.
Yeah, sorry.
Where there's no West Bank. And at the same time, one of the Israeli newspapers published an article saying that West Bank will now be converted into a combat zone. What are your perspectives on this kind of dehumanization? I don't know what else to say because what can you say beyond genocide? So, how do you interpret? Because a lot of Israelis, also citizens, are protesting. 70 to 72% of them want him to resign, and he's one of those men in the world who is going to start a third world war to just keep up his job. Maybe, but the point is that with all this mapping that is going on, the cartography of genocide. How do you perceive this as a threat to the psychological threat to those who are in Lebanon, to those who are in Syria, because it's going to spill over?
And it has already in many ways. But let me come back to the different levels of your question that is very interesting. First of all, what happened yesterday, I just saw a couple of images on social medias, Netanyahu presenting basically a card or a map of historical Palestine in which Israel basically occupies the whole of historical Palestine, which is the case already and since 67, without identifying the West Bank. It identifies the Gaza Strip, but it reflects also a deeper policy and a continuous historical policy of the Israeli state wanting to basically annex the West Bank. It's not a surprise to see that the largest expansion of settlement since 67 and accelerated after the so-called Oslo Peace Agreement in 93 occurred in the West Bank. And actually in the past year, since the 7th of October, there's been an acceleration of dispossession of Palestinians of their lands in a continuation, if you want, of the Alon Plan that was established in 67 by an Israeli general or officer in the Israeli occupation army that was basically to try to develop settlements in the West Bank massively in order to push also the Palestinians into cities in which an Arab collaborationist actor would rule over them, but on the top, Israel would continue to occupy historical Palestine. And this is a continuation since the Zionist movement was established, in Europe in the end of the 19th century until today. It's a willingness to establish a settler colonial state. And the model very often used to compare Israel with other colonial states is South Africa, Algeria. I don't think it's the right comparison. The key roots as a settler colonial state of Israel should be more compared with Northern America, Australia, in which the indigenous population has been quasi eliminated. And this is obviously the objective of the Israeli ruling class today, of Netanyahu, is to basically have only a symbolic presence of the Palestinian, kept in small camps or small urban areas. And Gaza is not directly targeted to be annexed, but to be destroyed, to render life completely unstable for decades. And this is much more dangerous. It's basically the quasi-elimination of all the Palestinians in the historical Palestine. And this brings me to your second question regarding the personality of Netanyahu and the current Israeli government. Without any doubt, this is the worst Israeli government we've seen in the history of Israel. But the problem is not with the color of this government, it's with the nature of the Israeli state as a settler colonial state. We shouldn't forget that Israel was established by what was called, the left Zionism. The Labour Party in Israel ruled Israel until the mid-end 70s, and with other periods in the 90s, etc. Today, it's nearly completely destroyed, or represents only a small fraction of the Israeli Knesset, the parliament. But my main argument is saying that the nature of the Israeli state is problematic, and not only the current government, because the people that have been protesting against Netanyahu have not been protesting against the nature of the Israeli state. Actually, even prior to the 7th of October, you had important demonstrations against the Netanyahu government, but only the Israeli flag was allowed. Any people or person, individual talking about occupation, colonization were kicked out. Even Palestinian personalities were kicked out. And actually, their argument is saying we will manage better than Netanyahu, the Israeli occupation and colonial state. And this is problematic. It's not only about the color, because very often, if the Western dominant narrative, we focus on the color of the government, and obviously it's problematic. We shouldn't undermine it. But the real problem, the real roots of the problem, is in the nature of the Israeli settler colonial state. And actually, there's no debate regarding the war on Gaza. The problem is the way the war on Gaza is being led since the 7th of October. At the same time, it's not the way there's a problem regarding the occupation, it's the way it is managed. And there's the tactical differences between what we call the center Zionism, right-wing, far-right wing Zionism. So we're actually witnessing what is at the root of Zionism, straight in our face. So this is problematic. Finally, threats over the region. As you may know, since the 7th of October, Israel has attacked Lebanon on many occasions. South of Lebanon has now more than 110,000 forced displaced individuals. Major infrastructure, civilian infrastructures have been destroyed, agricultural lands, white phosphorus has been used. So it's clear there's an intention by Israel to create a form of no man's land in the south of Lebanon, because Hezbollah also attacks have forcefully displaced, 60,000 Israelis, etc. But Israel has, completely disregarded what was used to be called prior to the 7th of October, the red lines or the lines of agreement. If you want, in the war, it has attacked Beirut twice. It has attacked far over south. Israel has also attacked Syria, but this has been ongoing for the past decade now. Particular, pro-Hezbollah, pro-Iranian, I would say, targets, but not only. And more widely, we can see, and it has, without forgetting, it has attacked as well, Yemen, Iran. So Israel is really the key root of instability in the region through its war in the genocidal war against the Palestinians in Gaza, continuous attacks in the West Bank, but more generally in the region by its attacks, etc. And actually, the Western states are not only a silent accomplice, they're directly
Yeah.
participating
Yeah.
in the genocidal war and in the ability of Israel to act in complete impunity. And it has created instability that exceeds only the Palestinian issue. And but this has been the case since the creation of Israel, if you look at
Yeah.
it honestly. In 56, Israel participated in the war against Egypt with France and Great
Yeah.
Britain. On numerous occasions, Israel has invaded Lebanon
Yeah.
since the end of the 70s, 80s, the 2006 war, etc., etc. And we shouldn't forget that you still have the occupied Golan, that is Syrian
Yeah.
territory.
Yeah. Occupied Golan, East Jerusalem, and West Bank. These
And
three
Gaza.
territories are not, there's a silent annexation happening over there, which is
Indeed.
not really explained. Like in 2016, I got the chance to go to West Bank, and I was shocked because in my mind, occupation was something like if West Bank is uh, a small territory, then at the border between Israel and West Bank, the occupation might be. But when I went there to Jenin, to Nablus, Bethlehem, Ramallah, there were two things that shocked me. The first was the great number of refugee camps in area A, B, and C. The second was specifically the fragility of Hebron. And third was this is a street where the Palestinians live. This is the street. And this is just opposite to them, highly capitalist, expensive bungalows of the settler occupiers. And I was shocked. It's like just you cross the road kind of phenomena. Like even the existence of the Shuhada Street, where the snipers are there all the way to shoot anytime, anyone. And I remember going to the apartheid wall and writing justice because there's no chalk or blackboard, like anything to write. So with a stone, I wrote justice, and within 5 minutes, it was erased. Within 5 minutes. So that is something which is very scary. It's like the silent annexation of West Bank, of Golan Heights, of East Jerusalem is not talked about. And that is what I think, in my perspective, Israel is taking advantage of by over amplifying one narrative or not caring about it and then silencing the other narrative altogether. But now coming to the question of Hezbollah, Hezbollah is a state within a state. Hezbollah has a lot of power within Lebanon. But at the same time, like right now, recently, today, Samir Gia, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, the head of Christian political party,
Like
Lebanese
that.
forces, he attacked Hezbollah. And he said that Hezbollah is not actually looking into the welfare of the Lebanese population. So, do you think that there is a growing rift now after October 7th between Hezbollah and Lebanon? Or it has been again being created as a propaganda?
No, thank you for a question that is very interesting. I think there's, again, different levels to it. First of all, well, if I had to do a criticism of Hezbollah, I wouldn't start with Samir Jarja. Samir Jarja is a war criminal during the Lebanese civil war, have participated directly or indirectly in crimes against Lebanese, Palestinians, and his party is a far right-wing political party. And it has participated in the Lebanese government's numerous occasions since 2005. But the fact is, definitely Hezbollah has lost of its popularity among the wider Lebanese population since 2006. Since 2006, when the Israeli war against Lebanon benefited, obviously, politically to Hezbollah. But moreover, at the time, there was a kind of a larger support among the Lebanese population towards Hezbollah. It was perceived as a war of aggression by Israel against Lebanon. Also, the context was different. And at the time, you did have, the recent concluding agreement between a major Christian party called the Free Patriotic Movement and Hezbollah. These two actors are not anymore allied like it used to be before, and the Free Patriotic Movement have denounced also the participation of Hezbollah in the current war. Moreover, also, what is interesting to understand is that basically the 2nd of October have deepened the isolation of Hezbollah among the Lebanese national scene, and for various reasons. I talked about, few elements are important to understand. First of all, it has participated in all national unity governments in Lebanon since 2005, following the withdrawal of the same regime of Lebanon. So it's considered, as part of the leading actors, the ruling strata, and the most important actor today in the Lebanese political scene, and partially, responsible for the current economic crisis with the rest of the Lebanese ruling class since 2019, the deep financial crisis. That you had an expansion of poverty massively in Lebanon, passing from 25 to 30% prior to 2019 to today, to some statistics saying between 60 to 80% of poverty among Lebanese population, which is mostly living up of remittances, etc. Second element is the participation of Hezbollah on the side of the Syrian regime to crush the Syrian uprising. So you see, Hezbollah was not anymore acting solely as a resistance actor, as its rhetoric claimed it, but was participating with a dictatorial regime to crush a Syrian uprising for democracy initially, etc. Thirdly, there's been a couple of sectarian tensions in which Hezbollah has been involved, whether with the Sunni community, whether the Christian community, whether the Druze community. And this has deepened since the 7th of October. A latest survey has shown that only 30% of Lebanese population supported Hezbollah. So there could be questions regarding the survey, how is what led, etc. But it's clear that Hezbollah has lost of its national popularity in Lebanon outside of its Shia community, outside of the Shia popular base. This said, there's something also to be noticed, is that it has not turned, despite criticism, into more sectarian strife between the Lebanese since the 7th of October, or deeper sectarian tension. On the opposite, if we look at, there's a rapprochement socially and politically, mostly politically, with sections of the Sunni community in Lebanon, and even, that some political party that is aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood in Lebanon, Jama'a Islamiyah, has participated in the resistance against Israel, and is very close also to Hamas. Also, the coalition with Hamas is important. So this forms the rapprochement here. But definitely what we can say is that Hezbollah has lost of its popularity for the reasons I mentioned, and is much more isolated nationally. And this is one of the reasons why also Hezbollah doesn't want a war with Israel.
Yeah. No, that's something which I remember, that when Nasrallah gave the speech for the first time after 7th of October, a lot of Palestinians were actually hopeful. Very hopeful. And then there were social media posts that were circulated, a few of them like throwing their shoes on the television after the speech, because they were not very satisfied. And now they have believed that none of them is actually rooting for them. That is the kind of utter alienation that they are going through now. But my question is that I want to understand two questions, but the answers of it, and I generally come from a point of ignorance because I don't understand the politics behind it. First is the timing of the death of Ismail Haniyeh and Fuad Shukr. The timing. Why did it happen at that time? And once you answer this complicated question, I'll ask you the second one.
Well, I think there's two kind of dynamics here. Fuad Shukr assassination, so a senior military commander of Hezbollah, and what is important is not only the timing, but more importantly, the location of the assassination in Beirut, in Dahye, which was considered, as a red line for Hezbollah. Finally, Hezbollah retaliated, or claimed to have retaliated, against an Israeli military target, Israeli military base in close by the city of Tel Aviv. But more importantly, Hezbollah has generally only targeted Israeli military targets within, historical Palestine, or what is called today Israel. And actually, the assassination of Fuad Shukr was instrumentalized by Israel in the meaning that there was a rocket that fell on a football field in the occupied Golan, killing 12 Syrian Jews.
Okay.
And you know, the occupied Golan is in Israel, etc. Israel claimed to take revenge of the assassination of these 12 Syrian Jews and claimed that the rocket came from Hezbollah. Hezbollah denied it. But most probably what happened, it was most probably a Hezbollah rocket that fell accidentally on this football field. We don't know the whole story about it. What is clear is that Israel instrumentalized this assassination, the murder of these 12 young individuals, Syrian Jews, to launch this attack. Why I say it's instrumentalizing? Because it's an occupied territory. The far majority, 80% of the Syrian Jews, have not taken the nationality, the Israeli nationality, and they are denied a number of services compared to the rest of the Israeli population. And they're very much opposed for the vast majority to the Israeli state. Even when you had Israeli ministers coming to pay what they call their respect to the civilians that died, the Syrian Jews, they were kicked out. They were oohed by the local population. So this is why I was saying it's an instrumentalization. And Israel took this opportunity to assassinate Fuad Shukr. And the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh was also a message sent to Iran, very clearly. The location is very important in Tehran. And in both moments is the general, moreover, the objective, there's one that is national, linked to more Netanyahu, political survival, to push, for victories and to stay in power, because, as you said, is very much criticized within, and to maintain the war. And secondly, more generally, it was an attempt to push for a more regional war, but it needed the US support. It needed US support to do this. In both cases, Hezbollah has retaliated, but in a very, I would say, moderate and calculated way. And this has been ongoing since the 7th of October. And Iran has still not answered or retaliated to the assassination of Haniyeh. So it's still, Israel still doesn't have the green light of the US to lead a more regional war, because the US doesn't want it regarding it. It's also its regional allies, our regional allies. And Israel knows if it wants to have a wider regional war, it needs US support. It needs US support, protection, etc. So these were kind of the objectives regarding the assassination at few hours of difference of Fuad Shukr, senior military commander of Hezbollah, and Ismail Haniyeh, leading Hamas political bureau member. And I would add something to the assassination of Haniyeh. It was also a way to basically, again, postpone the negotiation, to make them impossible to achieve, because Haniyeh was the main intermediary.
So that
political
is political and, the entire, I don't know what the real narrative is, but the entire bomb being planted by artificial intelligence days before his home, and all this entire, but again, the kind of sticky bombs that they have been using on Iranian nuclear scientists, and the kind of destruction that they have been doing in terms of the intellectual capacity of Iranian nuclear engineers, those in nanotechnology and others, is also something which is a matter of concern.